President Bollinger, Dean Rosenmich, EVP of Arts and Science, Amy Hungerfer, faculty, staff, family, and friends, thank you for inviting me to share this joyful day. I would like to also acknowledge my husband, Yarhi-Milo, as Lisa said, a proud GS alum, and our wonderful boys, Jonathan and Daniel, who are with us today. This ceremony is their first introduction to the GS family. Yeah. And to you, the class of 2023, congratulations. Now, I have some idea what's going through your heads right now, because 20 years ago, almost to the day, I sat where you're sitting. As I look out at your faces, a mix of emotions comes flooding back. I know many of you are as thrilled as I was to have made it to the finish line. A few of you are holding the hands of a fellow GS graduate like I was. Let me tell you, you might even marry them. For some of you, this day is bittersweet. Well, it certainly was for me. Even amidst all the excitement, I was devastated because my parents were not at my graduation. They'd put everything they had into my education and could not afford the trip to New York City. Some of you are confident about the future. Others are as anxious as I was. On paper, at least, it looked like I had it all figured out. I was heading to the University of Pennsylvania to pursue a PhD. But in reality, between you and I was lost. As the ceremony went on, I agonized, am I making the right decision? Is this the wrong decision? What am I doing? Maybe these questions are a little too familiar to some of you. Graduates, whatever emotions you are experiencing, I hope one is chief among them. An overwhelming sense of pride because you've earned a degree from the Columbia University School of General Studies. Now, as I look back, there are so many things I wish I could tell my 24-year-old self. But since I cannot go back in time, well, one of the many ways Back to the Future misled my generation, today I'd like to share that advice with you. Now, this really is a full circle moment, because 20 years ago, in his first year as president, President Bollinger shook my hand and gave me my GS diploma. 2 decades later, it's his last year as president and my first year as dean. Last fall, Lee delivered a superb convocation speech with 7 recommendations to the incoming class. So today, as a tribute to our president, to my mentor and friend, and his enduring legacy, I humbly offer 7 things I wish I had known on my graduation day. Now, if you think 7 things are too many, I originally considered basing this on another presidential speech, President Wilson's 14 points of world peace. So consider yourself lucky. All right. First, behind every triumph is a world of private struggle. From Lisa's generous introduction, and by the way, you have the most brilliant, amazing, loving, and caring dean in this university. But from her generous introduction, it might sound like these last 20 years have been one success after another. Well, that's far from the story. When she talks about dozens of articles that were published, I remember 40 more rejection letters. When she talks about awards I've received from my books, I remember the profound self-doubt that accompanies each one of them. When she talks about graduating with honors, I remember being heartbroken that my mentor advised me to get my PhD at UPenn instead of Columbia, to become a more well-rounded scholar. In hindsight, he was right. He was always right. But at the time, not continuing here felt like a huge failure. You see, that's the thing about CVs. The bullet points tell you someone's accomplishments. But if you really want to know what they're made of, ask them about the spaces in between. Be proud not just of this day, but of the struggle that brought you to this moment. The long hours at Butler Library, the frustration of trying to grasp a difficult concept, and of course, the difficulty of balancing it all with your life outside university's hall. Today's is the result of a lot of hard work, and the grind doesn't end here. There will never be a perfect moment when you can say, I made it. And even if there is, it may be followed by a deep sense of anxiety that you'll never live up to what that moment connotes. But if you approach the road ahead with the same determination and passion that brought you here, the struggle itself will be its own reward and the part of your story you're proudest to tell. Second, big dream. Sorry. Dream big. And big dreams will follow. And if you're already dreaming big, dream bigger. Every graduation is a culmination of a long journey. In my case, well, it started in middle school. Growing up, I was fascinated by Madeleine Albright. She captivated me first as the US ambassador to the UN, then as the first woman to serve as the US Secretary of State. She made her way fearlessly into rooms of foreign leaders, most of them men, and spoke her mind. And they listened, and so did I. So I did what we used to do before Google was invented. I picked up a book. And I learned that she attributed her skills to a university called Columbia. And I asked my parents if I could go there for my bat mitzvah trip. Now, I grew up in Israel with parents who did not attend college because they had to work multiple jobs to make ends meet from a very young age. So when I asked to visit, they were reluctant. It was a big ask financially, but they were also a bit confused. You see, they couldn't figure out what I felt so strongly about visiting Colombia, a Latin American country. So I told them, no, it's New York City. So my mother brought me here in middle school, and I was walking through the gates. I knew this was where I belonged. I picked up the course bulletin and highlighted all the classes I would take. Getting to GS a decade later was one of the best moments of my life. But even having achieved that dream, I could have never imagined I would return to Columbia as a professor, that I would be standing here as a dean of SIPA, that I would teach a class with another US Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. The moral of the story is this: be bold, be ambitious, not because all your dreams will come true, but because having a dream inspires you to work hard like nothing else can. That leads me to another hard-learned lesson. Having a plan is great, but the real test is how well you adapt when life intervenes. Class of 2023, you know this all too well. Since you came to campus, you've seen a pandemic, a long overdue reckoning with racism, and a financial crisis. Faced with isolation, you built community. Faced with loss, you developed resilience. Faced with change, you evolved. Adaptation is always hard. It forces you to confront and dismantle the illusion that you are in control. I had to learn that lesson when I was on the job market for the first time. For any doctoral student, the call to come interview for a tenure-track position is one of the big moments of an early career in academia. Well, I got that call when I was in the delivery room in Lenox Hill Hospital, getting an epidural, about to give birth to my son. When I saw the 609 area code, I knew it was Princeton, so I answered the phone. On the other side of the line was a famous professor who innocently asked, "Is this a good time?" I looked around me at the horrified faces of the doctor, the nurses, and my husband, and said, "Sure, I have about 10 minutes." The professor invited me to campus for an interview. 2 weeks later, I showed up, wearing clothes that hardly fit, exhausted from working on my slides while caring for a newborn. This messy scene did not match the image I've held about about the start of my career, or motherhood for that matter. After all, I had a brilliant plan to interview for jobs before giving birth. But my son came 5 weeks early, so I had two choices. I could cling to my quickly unraveling plan, or I could adapt. That decision you'll have to make not once, but over and over again. As I'm learning as dean, ironically, as you advance in your life and career, adapting may prove increasingly difficult, but it also becomes even more necessary. Of course, adapting to life's curveballs is a lot easier when you are not alone. Which brings me to something else I hadn't yet realized as I sat on the South Lawn in my regalia. As a wise woman once said, "It takes a village." I started building my village when I took my first political science class with the great Professor Robert Jervis. Yeah, that class began one of the most important professional relationships of my life. Bob's writing inspired me to become a political scientist, and Bob became my mentor, offering indispensable advice until the moment he passed away. Bob was just one of many points in a circle of collegiality, love, and friendship that surrounded and supported me throughout my career. So here I was at Princeton. I got the job. A year into my career as an assistant professor, racing against the tenure clock, when my 16-month-old son's pediatrician informed us that something was wrong. He had a motor planning disorder, and without intensive therapy, he might never speak. We were terrified. The news put everything in perspective, and I knew exactly where I needed to be. So I quit. Or at least I tried to. Thankfully, Princeton did not let me. They put me on medical leave so I could spend 40 or 50 hours a week in therapy with my boy. For me, deciding to quit was easy. It was the return that proved much, much harder. I had less than 3 years left to earn tenure. I was very behind. My senior colleagues at Princeton told me I needed to achieve what seemed like an impossible feat: publish multiple articles and a new book, all from scratch. It was up or out. I did not think I had it in me. I was mentally and physically spent. I was really ready to give up. This was when I really needed my village. "You're going to do it, Keren, and we're going to help." Those were Bob's words. I took a sabbatical from Princeton and came back, where else? Columbia, to write my book. I was surrounded by extraordinary brain power, but more importantly, by the love and confidence of my friends and colleagues, some of whom are here today. I'm proud of that book. I'm really proud that I got tenure, but I'm even prouder of my son, Jonathan, who was the hardest working toddler I've ever known. And today, yes, baby, today not only speaks, but speaks 3 languages. No matter what challenges you face, the journey will be more meaningful if you face them with the village you've been assembling. And when you are in a position to pay it forward, become a mentor, be their village, and watch them thrive. Because graduates, with the privilege of a world-class education comes a profound responsibility to serve your community. And here is the 5th lesson I wish to impart. Great universities like this one exist not only to cultivate scholars, but to nurture the next generations of leaders, to instill an ethos of service and a commitment to giving back. As a dean of SIPA, I feel extraordinarily fortunate to have a chance to serve the community that sparked my imagination, launched my career, and helped me make my comeback to academia. What Columbia has given me, I hope and strive to give our students. This is why I took this job and why I will never want to leave Columbia ever again. Today, I charge you with a similar mission. As you go out into the world, take every opportunity to give back. Not just to Columbia, but to your field of study, to the place where you live, to young people who dream of following in your footsteps. Because at the end of the day, what's true at GS is true in life. Fulfillment comes not from what you achieve, but from how deeply you invest in the people around you. The 6th thing I wish I'd known 20 years ago is that moments of uncertainty and flux, in those moments, leadership matters. You see, I study psychology of decision-making of leaders, and when it comes to understanding the impact of leaders on the world, there have long been 2 schools of thought. The conventional wisdom was that individual leaders don't matter. You could replace one leader with another, but eventually they will all be forced to respond to the constraints posed by the structure of the international system. Others come to contend that it's all about the leaders. If you want to understand the world, you should focus on their personalities, their histories, their belief systems. In reality, neither theory is sufficient, and instead, it's the combination of leaders and context that shapes events most profoundly. And in certain moments, moments of flux and uncertainty, that's when leaders matter a great deal. Now, this is a moment of flux and uncertainty. You are graduating into a world shaped by geopolitical realignment, rising poverty, democratic backsliding, and a climate crisis. But this moment of uncertainty is a moment of opportunity. It's a chance for entrepreneurial leadership, fresh ideas, and serious advocacy to make a difference. It's a chance for you to make a difference by practicing what you've learned here at GS. You've learned that thinking deeply is not just about what you know, but about examining your assumptions and biases. And if we've done our jobs right, you've learned to engage with others, including people with whom you don't agree. By thinking deeply, I hope you've also learned that emotions are not a hindrance to rationality. They connect us to each other and to ourselves. They help leaders build consensus and can fuel the most profound and meaningful forms of change. And speaking of passion, the last thing I wish I'd understood on my graduation day is that graduating from GS does not mean leaving GS, because GS never leaves you. Class of 2023, you came to Columbia as dancers, athletes, and musicians, veterans, parents, and small business owners, novelists, chefs, and plumbers. Many of you overcame extraordinary things: incarceration, abuse, illness, war. Others had ascended to the highest heights of a profession, but always felt that something was missing. Some of you were pursuing a second degree, others a second chance. Today, 550 unique journeys converge on the South Lawn. And before you move on to your next adventure, stop for a moment. Look around you and take it all in. This is the most socioeconomically diverse undergraduate college in the Ivy League. You are native New Yorkers, international students, and the children of immigrants and refugees. The youngest graduate today is 20, and the oldest is 61. Talk about living your big dream. While we're on the subject of dreams, I want to recognize the people who helped you achieve this one. All of the parents, family members, and friends with us today, in person and in spirit, thank you. Sitting before me are future diplomats and Supreme Court justices, scholars whose research will change the world and save lives, storytellers who will spark empathy and joy. This is a school of entrepreneurs, brilliant thinkers, big dreamers, and curious minds. It is a school with a soul. And graduate, that soul is you. So go out, write your next chapters, do good, and make Columbia proud. We will be cheering you on every step of the way, and we will be here for you when you seek a source of solace, a haven for renewal, and a home away from home. Owls, it's time to spread your wings, and 20 years from now, I look forward to hearing your advice for the class of 2043. Thank you, and congratulations.